Welcome. You're listening to Love Doctor Radio with Dr. Ann Love. We interview the people that you want to hear, celebrities and cutting-edge authors. We discuss current events and controversial topics. Your radio Love Doctor is a therapist of the Love Clinic in Newport Beach, California. She was a professor of hematology and lectured cardiologists and emergency room physicians at various locations. She worked in the special chemistry and toxicology at Johns Hopkins University Graduate School of Public Health. And now, here is the host of Live with the Love Doctor, Dr. Ann Love.
Hi, folks. This is Dr. Ann Love. I'm your Live with the Love Doctor, and I have with me my co-host is Brooke Smith of the Love Clinic. Hi, Brooke. Well, we got another controversial topic for you today. And the title of our show is Free Your Mind. Why do I do what I do? Now, I got a question I want to ask you folks. Are you naughty by nature? We're asking that question because there are things that reside in your DNA that will play out at different points and moments in your life. Maybe a time of vulnerability. Oh, why do I wear 6-inch heels? Why do I post everything on Facebook? I know when people post on Facebook, there is like a dopamine release. There's like a little high. And we've got people who are addicted to posting. Nothing wrong with Facebook. I use Facebook myself. But we're examining, why do I do what I do? Now, when we talked about, we made mention of, most people think that they do things because, you were raised a certain way, or they don't really give it much thought about, why do I make the decision? Why do I like the kind of guys I like? Why am I attracted to the muscle man? Why am I attracted to nerds? We don't think, why do we respond? Most people never analyze their own personal behavior patterns and that kind of thing. Well, I'm going to say that some people are naughty by nature. They get it in their DNA. Some people say, well, I was born that way. Well, you can be born with an inclination. Like your DNA, most people realize your DNA can determine eye color. My mom is blonde hair, blue eyes. The children come out with blue eyes, that kind of thing. But there's other encoding that goes in that DNA. And we've heard stories of twins that were separated at birth, and when they come back together, they have the same haircut, or they pick the same type of clothes. They have had totally separate upbringings. So there is another variable at play. If you're naughty by nature, do you have to play out your DNA? There's a book by Dr. Thomas Verney. He's a medical doctor, and he wrote this book called The Secret Life of the Unborn Child. In his book, he really records and follows these children from their in utero encounters through adolescence, through adulthood. And he has determined that there is a correlation of what happens in utero to the choices and things that people make as an adult. Well, so if you're naughty by nature, now I'm a therapist, so I see a lot of people and I see patterns of behavior that will happen. For instance, if a woman has a child and it's in a real crazy time in her life, a real rebellious time, or they're with, Joe the plumber, or maybe they're with, I'm trying to think of some guy that is just really, it's a hypersexual kind of encounter, and, they conceive this child. Okay, you have to realize every molecule, every atom, every organ, every tendon, every ligament that was formed at the time of that conception was formed with that same energy that she was operating under when that child was conceived. So how does that play out? when a child lives their life and they get to be a teenager, right around adolescence, we see this emergence of wherever the parent was walking at the time of conception, those children start acting it out. So now you got a reason. Okay, when you see your kids going left and they're going crazy and they're rebelling and they're running away and they're doing, just think about what you were doing. Okay, I'm just saying. Well, this is not a blame the parent session at all, not at all. What we're examining here is, why do people do the things you do? Why do we post things on Facebook? You know, there's a dopamine release when you say, well, I'm in Italy and I'm having a great time. You're in Polk, Kansas, somewhere in the hills, and nothing is happening in your life, and I've got this fabulous, there is a dopamine release when something great happens. Now, sometimes you just want to share, that experience, and it's nothing. I'm on Facebook, so I'm not criticizing Facebook at all, but I'm just examining, why do we do what we do? The other thing that I would deal with, like say with young people, I notice this all the time with teenagers. Everybody wants to emulate the popular kid. They want to be like the popular kid. Well, what makes the popular kid do what they do? A lot of times it's the shows they're watching. If they're watching Twilight, some of these other teeny bopper movies, Harry Potter, whatever, they may take on the personas of their favorite characters. And we see it all the time. Or also the sitcoms that they watch routinely. Like you were researching some of those little teenage shows that are popular right now, Gossip Girl and stuff like that. The other thing, music videos have a big impact. So when people watch these music videos, they want to emulate the person they see on the video. Like in my day, I grew up in the era of, Madonna and Prince. And so everybody wanted to wear, they wanted to be Purple Rain. Everybody had a lace and, you had the curly big hair, so, but Madonna didn't wear a lot. So, as a result, people start not wearing a lot. So now a lot of people emulate singers like Beyonce and whatnot. Speaking of Beyonce, let's delve into that a little bit, because she did an interview for BET, and she was talking about when she was on stage, how this other persona, this alter ego, comes over her. And I want to know, I'm going to ask our sound engineer, do we have that clip? Can we run that clip, please?
When I performed Crazy in Love at the BET Awards, it was almost like my coming out.
Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for my girl, Beyonce! Yes!
I was very nervous.
So crazy right now.
Of course.
Most incredible.
And I remember when they told me I was performing on BET, in my mind, I saw the set immediately. I said, I want something big. I want something that says, I'm here. Beyonce. And I drew it out. I drew out the ramp. I drew out the boxes for me and my girls. I drew out the lift right in the O. It just so happened that O was right in the center of my name for me to come down. I knew the dance. I knew about the pumps. I saw all of that in my head before it happened. And it's great when you visualize something and it actually comes to life.
Come on! One more time!
When I talk to my friends so quietly, who even need it? Look at what you do to me. Tennis shoes don't even need to buy a new dress. If you ain't there, ain't nobody else to impress.
It was way better than I expected. And Sasha was in full effect. Sasha is my alter ego. And when people see me, sometimes I think that when they meet me and they speak with me, they're expecting Sasha. And I'm really kind of shy, and not really shy, but more reserved, and nothing like Sasha. But I guess I wouldn't be very entertaining on the stage, so Sasha comes out, and she's fearless, know, she can do things that I cannot do when I'm in rehearsal. I mean, I can try, but then it just doesn't happen. I can sing notes and sing strong and do all these things that when I'm just by myself, I can't do. And I remember right before I performed, I raised my hands up, and it was kind of the first time I felt something else come into me, and I knew that was gonna be my coming out night for the BET Awards.
Looking so crazy in love, got me looking so crazy in love.
You know, now you've been watching this clip from Beyonce, and she says she felt something come into her. So now we're talking about why we do what we do. And we're, this whole show is dedicated to why we do what we do. And when, I was counseling a young girl, like 13-year-old girl or 12 or something, and she's in 7th grade. And all of the kids, they go to a private school. All the kids are basically pretty decent, wholesome, upright kids. Well, one of the girls that is on the team is going out with a football player. And one of the moms said that none of the other kids are really dating, just this one girl. Well, at the football game, my husband was sharing with me, he went to the football game, that the girl that's dating the football guy, her parents encourages the relationship. Now, this is a 7th grader. And the girl is sitting in between the boy's legs. They're rubbing and touching and everything. Okay, so now we're talking about the energy that Beyonce was talking about. There's an energy. She gets this persona and it makes her wild. And, and that energy is conveyed to everybody in the audience. Everybody picks up on that energy. That's why her concerts sell out. That's why she's Queen Bee. Okay, so now I want to talk about on a personal level, okay, because this is where we live. Why are we doing what we do? So what happened with this teenage girl, she started feeling like, stimulated desire for one of the boys in her class. So, when that happens, I ask different questions. Is he popular? No, blah, blah, blah. So I said, well, what is it that attracts you? She said, he's nice. He's really nice. And he's quiet. He's nice. And so what's happening, because I talked to one of the other moms that is in that is a classroom mom or something, and she said there was activations all over the classroom. All it took was this one girl that her parents, for whatever reason, is comfortable with you. If your daughter is sitting in between the guy's legs, they're rubbing, they're kissing, guess what? There's going to be a thunder down under. If you keep allowing that to happen, and at 12 or 13, kids cannot handle the power of that emotion. They can't even keep up with their backpack. Okay, so you got all of this energy going on, and it's spreading through the classroom. So other girls are feeling like, I want that attention. I want somebody hugging me. They were totally fine before this happened. So what in psychology we call it a transference. You can get a transference from a patient. A patient can come in and, and they're thinking a certain thing. And if the therapist isn't healed themselves, because just because you're sitting behind a desk doesn't mean you got it all together all the time. In fact, when I was in school, a lot of the people who were psychiatrists were crazy. I'm just saying. So you want to examine, why do I do the things I do? Why am I responding? So all these little teenagers now are getting sexually stimulated. And when that fire, that thunder down under starts happening, will they be able to control it? What will they need to do to put that fire out? Were you going to share something?
Well, and when you were talking, it's interesting because, so this is one girl in a classroom.
Yeah.
Of how many? 15, 20?
Mm-hmm.
So they get it, there's just one. What happens when they have that? Then they put the shows that they're watching.
Wow.
What and I remember growing up in the Madonna, MTV blew up.
Yeah, that's
MTV,
true.
I mean, that was like the thing.
Yeah.
MTV was like it. You ran home to watch it. You know, couldn't wait. You know, you did that before you did your homework.
Yeah.
You know, so I remember that. You know, so the kids are getting it from
Yeah.
at school,
Yeah.
but then they go home, you know, and it basically what it's doing is saying, yes, it's okay to do it.
Yeah.
You know, it's okay to do it,
Yeah.
and what you're doing is right.
Yeah.
You know.
Oh, and you know, the scary thing is, okay, so if you have a teenager and the teenager is watching Sasha Fierce and they want their body. I remember in high school when one of my girlfriends, she was very sexual. She became sexual in like, I want to say second or third grade. I mean, she was just always sexual, you know, almost. And so, but when she danced, she could roll her hips and I don't know what they call it now, but, you know, she, you know, did all of that. And I didn't know how to do it. And I remember her saying, oh, you're so stiff or whatever. But that hadn't been activated in me, you know. But what happened, and now I'm just thinking about what Beyonce was saying when she did that BET interview. Okay, now Sasha's coming from the screen through the TV set to all these millions of homes. And I remember going to my aunt's house for Thanksgiving in Milwaukee. And when I came in, they had the television on and they had like, you know, different, I don't know who it was, but anyway, they were dancing and it was the gyrations and the frequency. I mean, if you, even with the Beyonce concert, Beyonce personally seems like a really sweet, beautiful young lady, but that body is moving. Now, do you really want your 12, 13-year-old shaking it and wiggling it and causing the thunder down under, okay? Because if you wiggling it, you're going to shake something up in there and then somebody else is going to want to shake it up with them or at least touch it or look at it or whatever. So what we're trying to say is why do we do what we do?
Right.
You know,
Right.
why do we do what
Why
we
do
do?
we do? And also, how do you know, if you just look at Beyonce, she's normally very, you know, she said reserved.
She
What
is.
happens with the children that are reserved and then that happens to them, how do they fight it off? How do you know, I remember growing up and I was very reserved too. So growing up that way, you know, and being a woman in this world is not the easiest sometimes, you know. So if somebody else has been wiggling and jiggling it with somebody
Right.
else,
Okay.
and now they want
They
to wiggle
come in and
jiggle
wiggle
it
it with
you,
you.
and you necessarily don't want to do that.
Yeah,
And, you know,
that's true.
especially being 12 and 13, you're not emotionally, most 20-something or
No.
30-something year olds aren't emotionally able to deal with that,
Right?
you know,
Yeah.
even because this goes through all spectrums of life. You know, there are women and men that deal with it at work.
Yeah, it's
You
true.
know, so, you know, arming, you know, the audience to be able to say, why
Wait a
did
minute.
I just do that?
Yeah.
You know, I don't
or
know why I did
or
that.
maybe I need to check on my kid.
Yeah.
Sometimes, you know, people are tired. They're working. They you know, it's pressure.
Yeah,
If
it's
you're
a
in
lot.
a job, at a corporate job, they want 110, 150%. You know, you're happy when your kid is in the house and they're in their room and they're watching videos. You think, okay, that's great. But what are they watching? What is happening? Because, you know, this is the other thing is when that stuff happens and when your kid now gets sexually activated and that genie is out of the bottle, it's hard to put that genie back in the bottle. And there are not only sexually transmitted diseases, if you can take on somebody's persona from watching a music video, okay, and you want to dress like her, because all the it girls, that's what they're doing at school. What's going to happen when you are intimate with somebody and that person is really not healthy? And in that situation, when you got that person acting that way or whatever, and that now they take on that whole persona. Well, you don't have the control.
Right.
You know what I mean? You don't really have. As a teenager, you are now hypersexualized. Venereal disease. I have a friend, and you know she was very, very modest. She was a virgin until she was like 21, and I think the second guy that she was with, you know, something happened to her and she contracted something. Well, it affected all of her internal organs. She could never have a child. And when we were in college, that's all she wanted, to be a mom. I didn't want to be a mom. To be honest with you, I didn't even like kids at the time. I'm an only child, folks, okay? So I didn't understand kids. And then I ended up, having a child and everything, and she didn't have. So the love of her life, the desire of her life was taken from her, from something that happened at such a young age. And so we're just trying to arm people. And even with Beyonce, we're talking about why do people do what they do. She has a song out called 6 Inch Heels, and I can't talk about all the lyrics on there, but it says 6 inch heels, she walks in a club like nobody's business. GD, she murdered everybody and I was a witness. So so when she's talking about these 6 inch heels, we live in Orange County, like in Newport Beach, people are wearing those 6 inch heels. Some of these and the Louis Vuitton ones are over $1,000. They're really high heels. Why do people do what they do? Now, you know what? Show some of those. We have some pictures of some of these shoes, because I wore them in high school, and I went up thousands of stairs, So we're not judging anybody. We're just saying we want you to be armed and dangerous. Why am I doing what I'm doing? And even to promote what happens when I do what I do. Where does it come from? Where does this rabbit hole go? So when you're looking at these 6 inch heels and you're thinking about they're not comfortable, they cause problems with your calves. We even have a video. We might even show that video because it was hilarious, where they literally teach people how to wear these 6 inch heels, the stilettos, the platform shoes, and how to learn how to walk in them. And the video is pretty funny. Let's go ahead and run that clip, because the video is kind of funny. Because you see people falling down in the grass. Because, you ever walk and then the heel goes down in the dirt. So why do we do what we do? We got some answers for you.
Hey everyone, Cassandra Brooks here, and you're watching I'm Hot TV, and this episode is going to be all about how to walk in high heels. So whether you've never slipped on a pair of heels before because you've always been kind of nervous, or maybe you like walking in heels but you just need a little extra boost of confidence, this is going to be the perfect video for all of you guys. Some high heels can be tricky, and certain environments like grass or cobblestone can make walking in heels nearly impossible. Well, I'm going to share with you all the tips and tricks that I've learned along the way and picked up during my time in the fashion industry. Now, one of the first things that everyone's probably going to tell you when you're trying to learn how to walk in heels is to start small and to work your way up. This means start with the smallest heel that you can find possible and then work your way on up to those big, huge stilettos. I do agree with this, but I also believe that it's really important to find a heel that's stable. That's why I think it's a little bit easier to learn how to walk in heels in a chunkier, maybe a little bit taller, but definitely thicker heel, opposed to walking in a shorter heel that's very narrow, because the wider the heel width is, the more stability you're going to have, because there's more surface area hitting the ground. Another thing to think about that will give you more stability is an ankle strap. Not only are ankle straps fashionable, but they're also functional as well. Another great option for beginners is wedges. Wedges have more surface area that hit the ground, which makes them more stable and also a lot more comfortable. Now, once you find your beginner heel, whether it be a kitten heel, a wedge, or a chunky heel, you're going to want to practice, practice, practice. I'm sure you've heard it before, practice makes perfect, and learning how to walk in heels is no exception. You're going to want to start out by putting one foot in front of the other. That's rocket science. But no, really, you're going to want to put one foot in front of the other in the heel-to-toe method. This means that the heel of your shoe is going to hit the floor first, followed by shifting your weight onto the toe of the shoe, and that's going to go like this: heel-toe, heel-toe. If you try to do this in reverse, toe-heel, first of all, this is going to feel really awkward, and it's going to look just as weird, so you want to stay away from doing that. You also want to stay away from being horse-footed. This means putting all of your weight down on the toe and the heel at the same exact time. This is going to make a stomping loud noise, and it's not going to look very graceful at all. You're going to want to practice this heel-to-toe motion around the house. Practice it so much to the point where you don't have to think about it anymore. And then you'll just be walking and it will just flow gracefully. Now it's time to invent a signature walk. You can easily perfect your strut by practicing walking in a straight line. Now this sounds a whole lot easier than it is. So the best way to do this is to find a straight line anywhere you can find. Hardwood floors, parking lots, or straight lines and concretes are great options. You want to start at one end of the line and practice by looking at your feet and placing one foot in front of the other in the heel-to-toe motion. By doing this, you are creating an illusion of a more slender, streamlined frame. And this also causes your hips to sway, which is sexy and has a runway vibe. Now let's talk about your stride. This is different for everybody. Just keep in mind not to overextend. If your legs are overextended too far and you step on something slippery, you could unintentionally end up in the splits. And you don't want to take too little of a stride because this is going to take you a lot of steps to make it to your destination. If you are running late for your destination, chances are you're probably going to have to learn very quickly how to run in high heels. And I'm not saying I'm late all the time, but I have definitely mastered this move. When you want to master the art of running in high heels, you are going to be aware of your surroundings. You want to make sure that you look at the ground because you're going to be moving fairly quickly. So you want to make sure that you scout ahead. Make sure that you're not going to be running into any potholes or different pavement. If you're going from concrete to grass, that could really mess up your whole entire day. So you want to be aware of your surroundings. All right, it's time to cover how to walk on unforgiving grounds, such as grass. If you're walking across grass, be sure to not do the heel-to-toe method. Instead, you're going to want to try to tippy-toe across the grass. Otherwise, your heel will be digging into the grass, you could fall over, and you could be damaging your high heels. If you're walking across uneven pavement, such as cobblestone, you want to make sure that you proceed with caution and glance down frequently. That way you can plan out your steps. Also, if you have a friend with you, you can lean on them for stability. Now it's time to talk about walking up and down stairs. Don't be scared. This is actually a whole lot easier than it sounds. And there's usually a handrail to help you out. Always, always use that handrail. Even after you've mastered the art of walking in heels, I recommend using the handrail because slips happen to the best of us. When you're walking up the stairs, you actually want to put most of your weight on the front of your foot. If you were doing the heel-to-toe motion going up the stairs, it would actually be very easily to lose your footing, and that heel could be hanging off the stairs, and you could fall completely backwards, so you don't want to do that. As well, when you were coming down the stairs, you kind of want to put all of your pressure down at the same time. If you're going heel to toe, that's okay too, but it's a little bit more safe if you you just plant your foot, you do that horse foot down those stairs, and it will get you down safely. Let's talk about high heel etiquette. We've all seen this before. It's late at night, and a girl is walking on the dirty concrete barefoot. That's because her feet are probably killing her and she did not bring any backup. Any fashionista will tell you that it's very important to always keep a pair of flats or a change of shoes with you at all times. You can get these little fold-up flats that you can even carry in a clutch nowadays, so there are no excuses, okay? I'm holding the shoe to show you that not all heels are created equally. You don't have a super high pitch to your arch, because there's actually a hidden platform here that's 2 inches. So while the back heel may be 6 inches, the front platform is 2 inches, which actually makes this heel feel like it's a 4-inch heel. Ladies, it's very important that you don't forget to relax and smile. I want you to remember that the most sexiest thing you could ever wear is confidence. Hopefully by now you guys have mastered how to walk in high heels. Thank you so much for watching this video. We hope to see you again soon. Keep it hot. Bye.
Now you have been watching it's hilarious. People are trying to walk in these big 6-inch heels. Now, we're not judging anybody because we both did it. We did it, okay? So, but we're trying to cause us to think about why we do what we do. Now, we've looked at shoes. Let's look at our clothes. Let's look at some of the clothes. Now, we have some pictures of some of the clothes, and I'm going to ask my sound engineer to play those pictures. And there's 3 pictures of women who, they just look really, really sexy. And then we have a picture of, some pictures actually of Kim Kardashian, that how she looks now and how she looks when she looks really, really beautiful. And I want to talk to you guys a little bit about where does all this come from? Why do people desire to alter themselves? And so I want to talk to you a little bit about Edward Bernays. He is the nephew of Sigmund Freud. He wrote several books. One of them is called Crystallizing Public Opinion. The other one is called Propaganda. Now I'm quoting from his book, Propaganda. Now this book was published in 1928. And he says Freud pointed out Freud pointed out the thoughts and actions are sometimes substitutions for desires, which a person has been obliged to suppress. But they may be desired not for its usefulness, but because of a person's unconsciously, they see it as a symbol of something else. The desire for which a person may be ashamed to admit to himself or even others. For instance, a man buying a car may think he wants the car so he can get around from A to Z, but really he wants that particular car because it's a symbol of his social position. Or it's evidence of his success. If you pull up in a Bentley, it could be also a means of attracting women. Edward Bernays persuaded women to smoke. He convinced America that bacon and eggs was the true all-American breakfast. He used medical doctors in his advertising and in his public relations pieces to convince people that this hearty breakfast of bacon and eggs is better for them than maybe oatmeal or something else. And so all of America and the meat industry loved it. He also facilitated the overthrow of the Guatemalan president. So I'm going to have, ask my sound engineer, do you have that clip on Edward Bernays? Let's go ahead and play it, because this is important, because we're talking about why do you do what you do, and we're going to go into, in all areas of our life, the medical industry, even who we elect as president, what they use, the devices and things that they use. We want you to be on the throne in your life. You should be able to dictate, okay, what thoughts are coming out of this mind? How am I responding to these thoughts? And where does it come from? So we want you to free your mind. Watch this clip on Edward Bernays.
The conscious and intelligent manipulation of the organized habits and opinions of the masses is an important element in democratic society. Those who manipulate this unseen mechanism of society constitute an invisible government, which is the true ruling power of our country. We are governed, our minds are molded, our tastes formed, our ideas suggested, largely by men we have never heard of. In almost every act of our daily lives, whether in the sphere of politics or business, in our social conduct or our ethical thinking, we are dominated by the relatively small number of persons who understand the mental processes and social patterns of the masses. It is they who pull the wires which control the public mind, who harness old social forces and contrive new ways to bind and guide the world. This passage was written by Edward Bernays, the nephew of Sigmund Freud and a pioneering mind behind advertising, modern propaganda, and the field of public relations. Bernays' influence was enormous. Relying heavily on the insights of his uncle, he developed highly successful manipulation techniques which are still used today, not only by companies to sell consumer products, but also by the powers that be to, in the words of Bernays, control and regiment the masses. In this video, we'll explore some of Bernays' most intriguing ideas, paying particular attention to his insights on how group psychology can be used to control and manipulate the masses. In his classic work, Group Psychology and the Analysis of the Ego, Sigmund Freud described group psychology as being concerned with the individual man as a member of a race, of a nation, of a caste, of a profession, of an institution, or as a component part of a crowd of people who have been organized into a group at some particular time for some definite purpose. In other words, group psychology attempts to understand how an individual's behavior, thoughts, and emotions change when becoming a part of a group. The tendency of human beings to form groups was selected for in our evolutionary past due to the survival benefits it offered. Ancient humans who organized into tribes were more likely to survive and reproduce in the harsh environments in which they lived. However, with the help of modern technologies, humans today have transformed the environment in a manner which renders the survival value of tribal organization obsolete. But with that said, the ancient and instinctual pull of tribal organization still looms large in the lives of most, with many people today identifying and hence stereotyping both themselves and others based on things such as race, class, gender, nationality, religion, or the political party or ideology to which one adheres. This continued proclivity to engage in group identification is, according to Bernays, a function of the enlarged sense of self-importance that individuals derive from identifying with a potentially powerful mass. Just as the wolf pack is many times as strong as the combined strength of its individual members, so too the individual senses the potential power of the group, and it derives feelings of potency in identifying with it. Beginning in the late 19th century, a number of thinkers, most notably Freud and Gustave Le Bon, attempted to understand why people engage in group identification and how group identification affects one's mind and behavior. As Bernays noted, the insights that emerged from this study caught the attention of those in positions of power who wanted to expand their control of societies. These people saw the potential of taking the theoretical insights of group psychology and transforming them into practical methods that could be used to manipulate the masses from outside of the public's eye, a task which formed the basis of Bernays' work in public relations. As Bernays explained in his book, Propaganda, the systematic study of mass psychology revealed the potentialities of invisible government of society by manipulation of the motives which actuate man in the group. These studies established that the group has mental characteristics distinct from those of the individual, and is motivated by impulses and emotions which cannot be explained on the basis of what we know of individual psychology. So the question naturally arose: if we understand the mechanism and motives of the group mind, is it not possible to control and regiment the masses according to our will without their knowing it? The great potential of using insights from group psychology to control the masses is partly a function of the fact that an individual can be influenced by a group or crowd even when physically isolated. As Bernays pointed out in his book, Crystallizing Public Opinion, a crowd does not mean merely a physical aggregation of a number of persons. The crowd is rather a state of mind. So long as one engages in group identification, their mind and behavior will be changed by the enduring influence of group psychology, even with no other members of the group physically present. To understand how the tendency of human beings to engage in group identification renders the masses manipulable, we must turn to one of Freud's ideas which heavily influenced the manipulation techniques developed by Bernays. In his book Propaganda, published in 1928, Bernays explained, "It is chiefly the psychologists of the school of Freud who have pointed out that many of man's thoughts and actions are compensatory substitutes for desires which he has been obliged to suppress. A thing may be desired not for its intrinsic worth or usefulness, but because he has unconsciously come to see in it a symbol of something else, the desire for which he is ashamed to admit to himself. A man buying a car may think he wants it for purposes of locomotion. He may really want it because it is a symbol of social position, an evidence of his success in business, or a means of pleasing his wife. What Freud suggested is that often there is a divorce between one's conscious thoughts and feelings and desires which do not fit with one's self-image and which are therefore suppressed. This fact, Bernays recognized, renders human beings manipulable. For what it implies is that if one can design propaganda or psychological operations that bypass the conscious and rational faculties of the individual targeting instead suppressed emotions and hidden desires, it is possible to move people to adopt beliefs and behaviors without them being aware of the underlying motivations leading them on. As Bernays explained, men are very largely actuated by motives which they conceal from themselves. It is evident that the successful propagandist must understand the true motives, and not be content to accept the reasons which men give for what they do. It is possible, although often difficult, for an individual to become aware of the underlying motives driving their beliefs and actions through honest and critical introspection. However, once one succumbs to the effects of group identification, such critical introspection becomes nearly impossible. A group is extraordinarily credulous and open to influence, wrote Freud. It has no critical faculty. In identifying with a group, the individual subordinates self-analysis and a discerning search for the truth in favor of maintaining group interests and cohesion. And with their critical capacities weakened by the influence of group psychology, they become highly susceptible to psychological operations designed to target suppressed or unconscious desires and emotions. In the modern day, there appears to be forces operating through the mainstream media and popular culture which are attempting to increase the individual's proclivity to engage in certain types of group identification, namely, identifications that divide the population into conflicting groups. This phenomenon has potentially dire consequences for both the stability and freedom of a society, as it allows those in power to institute the age-old tactic of divide and conquer. In his book, Discourses on Livy, Machiavelli noted that those who have held power over a population have long realized that a population united is always stronger than those who rule over it, and thus stretching back into ancient times, rulers have sought to divide the many and weaken the force which was strong while it was united through the use of those methods which promote division. By dividing a population along lines such as race, class, religion, gender, or political preference, or in other words, into groups naturally prone to clash, the effects of group psychology render rational discourse and debate between individuals in these separate groups extremely unlikely. Each group, Bernays wrote, considers its own standards ultimate and indisputable, and tends to dismiss all contrary or different standards as indefensible. Unable to settle differences in opinions via rational discourse, groups whose belief structures clash tend to revert to more destructive means in their attempt to defeat those they perceive as a threat. A society dominated by such groups is thus easily divided in increasingly hostile conflict, and as a result, not only does the population as a whole become weakened, as Machiavelli pointed out, but its eyes are diverted away from the actions of those operating behind the scenes, who constitute, in the words of Bernays, the invisible government who controls the destinies of millions. While there is nothing wrong with deriving a sense of belonging based on the commonalities we share with others, it is misguided to base our personal identity primarily on our group memberships. In terms of our evolutionary history, it is only fairly recently that we developed the ability to become aware of ourselves as individuals, separate from any group or tribe. This was a crucial development in consciousness, as the existence of a society based on individual rights and personal liberties is dependent on a population which has developed this capacity for individual consciousness, or in other words, on a society of individuals who understand themselves and treat others as individuals first and foremost. As Erich Neumann pointed out in his classic work, The Origins and History of Consciousness, prior to the development of this capacity for individual consciousness, the group and group consciousness were dominant. The individual was not an autonomous, individualized entity with a knowledge, morality, volition, and activity of its own. It functioned solely as a part of the group, and the group, with its superordinate power, was the only real subject. Seen in this light, the proclivity of individuals today to engage in group identification is not only a danger to the freedom and stability of a society, but it is also a regression of consciousness back to a more primitive psychological state, and therefore, from the standpoint of modernity, a pathological tendency that needs to be overcome. Or as Sigmund Freud put it, each individual has a share in numerous group minds. those of his race, of his class, of his creed, of his nationality, etc. And he can also raise himself above them, to the extent of having a scrap of independence and originality.
So you were watching the clip on Edward Bernays, and his book, Propaganda, used half-truths, lies, misleading information, bias, and select history. God, sounds like somebody in the White House. Anyway, but the point that I'm making is what is influencing people? What is causing them to do what they do? Even we were talking about Kim Kardashian. She's a beautiful girl who altered herself, provocatively altered herself. Why is she doing what? Why is she attracted to the kind of men she's attracted to? I know you were sharing something earlier about the Machiavellian personality type. You know, can you speak a little bit more in more detail about it?
Sure, and I think we've covered it before on the show, but that Machiavellian personality, and you can look it up on Wikipedia. You know, it's a test that they do to
the Mach 5 test.
Yeah, that Mach 5 test, and what they do is to see how selfish and narcissist a person is, but it has also it affects people around them. You know, it's a very dominant personality.
Yes.
And and most of the time it plays out in men, but it can play out in women also. But it affects a woman in a way when that personality is in play. It affects a woman to the point to where they'll do anything.
Yeah.
You know, and different things, that it makes a woman insecure. You know, it leaves a person brokenhearted, that loss of identity, you know, and when you look at all of the different things, you know, even with Kim Kardashian, the things that may have happened to a person.
Yeah.
You know, and just living a life, you know, that we've experienced, you know, I can identify with that. You know, I can identify with that personality in the world today and in the world growing up, and what it does to a person. You know, it makes you alter who you really are. You lose who you are, you know, and really having the control of, you know, basically what you do is you give yourself to everybody. You know, and whatever they want, that's what you do, instead of having the identity and standing for who you are and being able to stand for who you are. Because most of the time, you know, women, they're not allowed to stand, you know, and even men get affected by it also. They're not they're not able to stand for who they really are.
And it goes through generation to generation. When you were speaking, I was thinking we did a whole show on the Machiavellian personality, but this thing, when you look at the women like Whitney Houston, okay, she's dead. Now, I'm not saying that person she was married to killed her, but, you know, she was drawn to a type, okay? And I'm sure there were other variables as well, but it took her down a road, and you could see that she wasn't healed. You know, when you look at Kim Kardashian, I know when she first, she divorced that other guy, the Hump, or whatever they called him anyway, the basketball player. And then when she got with Kanye West, everybody was like, Kanye? I mean, it just seems so far-fetched. I mean, a beautiful woman like that could probably have anybody she wants. And he's, you know, I mean, he's crude. You know, he's a different tool in the toolbox, so to speak. And so we live in a society where you're supposed to be free. And when you're supposed to be free, but if something else is altering our ability to make a decision, you know, okay, this leads me, you know, it was something we were talking about earlier when we were even talking about the democratic process, okay? Cambridge Analytica did different research, and there's stuff now out in the news about Facebook ads being taken in by another country and running to manipulate the elections and stuff like that. But somebody, I heard on the CNN that it was like over 125 million people watched those ads. Well, we're influenced by the stuff that we see and hear. If that information is inaccurate, you make decisions about those but you make decisions with inaccurate data. So then that begs the question, okay, we're talking about a little bit about Edward Bernays and the Machiavellian personality, and it has a narcissistic, the person that's there now is very, very narcissistic. Impulse control disorder. If we can do that Mach 5 test, and I already know what that person would score based on the behavior we've seen. So we're saying, so a person that they don't even know why they do what they do, because a person with impulse control disorder, they're in the highest position in the land, but they can't control what they say. So the reason we're doing this show is for everybody, for even people that are in the highest power in the land. They're doing things to hurt themselves when they're already where they need to be, or where they aspired to be anyway. So I just wanted to go even into, like when we were talking about Cambridge Analytica and stuff like that, this particular company compiled data that told whoever the person that was their client, in this case I think it was Ted Cruz used them, and then the current president also used them, which states to go to, which states would be influenced by what, because they did the statistical data and compiled it. Well, somebody would say, well, that's good. They're doing their market research. But when you read Edward Bernays' book on propaganda, it's called Propaganda. It's manipulation. And so we need to, as people, not just, okay, we're watching Fox News and we believe everything we see. We need to analyze the information that we are getting. Is it true? Is there, and one of the things that narcissistic personalities do, they accuse the other person of what they themselves are doing. So they will, if they're putting out false statistics or things that are not true, they'll claim that the other person is full of lies, or whatever the case might be. So all I'm saying is we need to be more proactive. We can't just let life happen to us. The name of the show is Free Your Mind. Free your mind. A lot of times people don't think about these things, but when they come up, and when you're dealing with that Machiavellian personality, if you think about everything that we believe in, our elections, the history has been altered. I mean, American history was, basically the people who came here stole the country from the people who were already here, then stole some people to come in and work for free so we can be the wealthiest nation in the world. That's our history. That's not good. So if you think about a country that has values that can justify that, then you need to be able to be in control of your own thoughts. Don't let anyone, like you were saying, that Machiavellian personality, it causes a person to come subject to it. You become intimidated. That personality is so dominant that everybody just bows down to it. And they use manipulation also.
They do.
If you don't do what I want, then you're stupid. And I see it with women. They dummy the women down there. They speak so harshly, and they are not strong enough to fight back. Mm-hmm. But some women, if they don't know why they're doing what they're doing, will repeat it again and again and again. They're with that same type of man. Even our medical industry. If you work for a job, you pay into your insurance, okay? The company pays a portion, you pay a portion. But who says that you can only go to a medical doctor? Maybe if you, if a person had cancer, okay, and you see statistically the people who had this particular type of cancer, the medical facilities, there's 3 ways that they treat it: radiation, chemotherapy, and surgery. And maybe that didn't work so well for the last 5 people who had that particular type of cancer. And maybe you want to go to a naturopathic doctor. Maybe you want to look at some holistic medicine. Maybe you want to try some alkalining your body, and because cancer cells don't grow in an acidic environment. Maybe you want to do something different. And in fact, if there's anybody listening, if you're dealing with any kind of autoimmune disease, Crohn's disease, lupus, scleroderma, even arthritis, there is a video. Now, I haven't tried all these formulas, but I'm telling you, this information was speaking to me. And the name of the video is, you can get it on YouTube. They say cure any autoimmune disease, Crohn's disease, type 2 diabetes, MS, lupus, arterial sclerosis. The video itself is 3.5 hours long. But and these are MDs, PhDs. They're people who are highly qualified to make these decisions and to analyze this data. This isn't some Yoko. You got to watch what you see on the internet and on YouTube, because anybody with an iPhone can make a YouTube video. But these are people who are qualified. And I'm telling you, one of the ladies on our staff sent me that video. And Ms. Diane, thank you. Because that video, it makes you think, wait, this is my body. Why does the insurance company get to tell me who I can go to for my medical care or for my health? This is my body. And why can't we do integrated care? Why can't it be a naturopath, or maybe a herb specialist, somebody who is research herbs and the percentage of herbs? Drug companies cannot. They can't patent an herb if it grows naturally out of the ground, or vitamins and minerals and whatnot. So in order for them to own that patent or own that product, it has to be chemically made in a way. So you need to know that the drug companies these are businesses. People with businesses do things that are good for the business. And hopefully it's good for you. Now, I'm 25 years in healthcare. I came from Johns Hopkins. I believe in medical care, but I don't believe it should be your only option. I don't believe when you work, and if you are the person that's going to suffer by this illness, I don't believe that your options should be limited. I also think that there's something wrong when the parents lose the power with saying what care their child has. And because, and they'll say, well, a person can die. Do you know how many people die in the medical, doing medical treatments? It's par for the course. It's part of what happens. So we're doing this show because we're saying free your mind. Free your mind. And I say it passionately because I see people that go to an early demise, both physically, medically, intellectually. I see people bound. I see the whole evangelical community being influenced because of data that may have been tainted. That being said, it is important that you get the information and you process it. Even when you're watching the news, don't just watch one channel. Even the top stations. I mean, you can do Euronews.com, and I think there's all kind of different news entities. Because if you only look at one thing, you're going to get a skewed view. Was there something that you were going to share?
And what you were talking about, going back to Edward Bernays, one thing that, when you were talking about it, that I want you guys to realize out there is that America has adopted, because he created the PR, public relations. Yes. That means all of the
advertising,
the advertising that you do for music, for TVs, it's being adopted into that and being released into America.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
No matter, so that manipulation, because you were saying that it's manipulation.
Yeah.
that's being used.
Yeah.
You know, and I remember this one in Pretty Woman. You remember when she said, I decide who.
Yes.
And I decide when.
Yes,
And
yes.
you have the ability to decide.
Yes.
You decide when and you decide who.
Yes.
And so take back the authority and your control
Take
for
back
your body.
your power. That's right. And you're watching Live with the Love Doctor. If you need help taking back your power, call our Love Clinic line. I'm Dr. Ann Love, and you're Live with the Love Doctor. My co-host is Brooke Smith. You can reach us at theloveclinic.org.